Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. So happy to have each and every one of you back here today and super excited to have my guest. I've got Yvonne Halling. She's the founder of bedandbreakfastcoach.com, which works with clients to support them worldwide. So Yvonne, I'm so happy to have you here. This is exciting.
Thank you, Jason. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating conversation. It's a little different than some of the guests we have on here that are more of the tour operators, but we have had conversations with some folks in the space that work with tour operators. You work well, I don't want to make any assumptions. You're going to tell us, but you work with people that maybe are not necessarily adventure tour operators, but the conversation impacts a lot of people that listen to this because a lot of them travel, a lot of them find themselves in places. Some of them may have facilities that you would help them kind of take to the next level. And I'm personally interested because I've been traveling full time for 4.5 years. And the last time we spoke, I said, I have so many questions after staying in probably 100 to 200 different, kind of that Airbnb type of place. So I've been chatting for a while. I really want to, first of all, share with our listeners, what your perspective is of what you do, why you do it, kind of the 30, 60 second elevator pitch, and then we're going to dig much deeper into it over the course of the conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah, certainly. So the potted version then is that I ran a bed and breakfast business in the Champagne region of France for 17 years. And I opened it in 2000 before the internet as a hobby business, a side thing, while my husband was working for a little champagne company that you might have heard of called Moet and Chandon. Mm-hmm. So I was home alone with our 2 girls in the French countryside, and I decided that running a bed and breakfast was the best way for me to occupy myself and meet some interesting people, because we have travelled quite a lot and I love to meet new people. Mm-hmm. So that it went well for several years, and we loved it, and we did it when we wanted, and when we didn't want to do it, we didn't do it. So it was very much an off-on thing and not making very much money at all. We weren't in it for the money. And then everything changed in 2008, 2009. I don't know if you remember the global financial meltdown. And so we went through a period of a lot of turmoil, lost a lot of money financially. We're in trouble emotionally as a family. So one day, with the bailiffs at the door and the gas cut off, I decided that I needed to grow that business. It had suddenly become our main source of income for our family. And so I decided that they weren't going to take my house, and I was going to make this work. And so I set about it, and I watched a lot of stuff online, and I listened to a lot of stuff online because the online world had come on stream by that time. And so in 2010, I set up my own website, rudimentary website, and within 2 years, I was making 100,000 euros a year from making less than 10,000 as a hobby.
Wow.
Without Booking.com or Airbnb. And I think that's quite unique in this space.
Yeah.
And then I won a well-known, in my world, a well-known online marketing award. And that, and they sent, the company that awarded me the award sent a film crew over to my home in Champagne in France to film me. And that little film that they made of me, which is only 4 minutes long, kind of made me a bit famous online. And
Oh.
so people started asking me, well, what are you doing? How did you do that? How did you go from less than 10,000 a year to making only over 100,000 with just 4 rooms? 4 rooms. And no online travel agents. And so I started helping people because they were asking me. And then I put all of my knowledge into my program, which I still teach to this day because it's based on principles, not trends or tricks or tips. It is a foundational piece of training that I believe everybody in this space needs in one way or another. So I put it into my program, which has evolved and morphed over time. It's called the B&B Moneymaker Business Transformation Program, and it has been responsible for masses of growth with my clients, double, triple incomes, and lots more besides over the past 10 years since I started it. So that's the potted version. That's where we are today.
Very, very cool. I was expecting I help people that have homes with extra rooms. No, that was great. I love that you got into the story behind it because that's such an important part of it. And really, that's what this conversation is going to be. So we're going to go back even further to before you were in Champagne and to kind of figure out how you got from really where you started to kind of where you are now. And I have so many questions just based on what you said. When I look out at the landscape of that Airbnb, so many things I want to ask. I'm trying to figure out the right timing. I'm going to ask you this one now because if I don't, I won't be able to get it out of my head. It feels like the term Airbnb has come to represent a whole industry. I started this. I said that I've stayed in probably 100 to 200 Airbnb. Well, it wasn't all Airbnbs. They were booked on other platforms as well, but I have this story in my head of what it is to me. And since you got started in this before all of that stuff really was popular, you've got potentially a different take on it. So is it okay to say Airbnbs? Do the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when people start talking about, oh, you're an Airbnb coach? Tell me more.
I'm afraid so. I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it does. Yes, I have a lot to say about this.
I suspect you do.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to ask.
So what do you want me to talk about first? The Airbnb thing or how I got into this?
Well, we're going to...
So I have a backstory as well.
Well, we're going to get into the backstory. Let's just touch on the inflaming part of people using the term Airbnb. How did our culture come to the point where we refer to every bed and breakfast as an Airbnb? We assume they're all on Airbnb. So let's just touch on that a little bit, and then we're going to go back into your past.
Yes. So haven't they been clever? What a clever move on their part, right? To have co-opted that term, bed and breakfast, B&B, to make it a verb now, a bit like Google. But Google is a verb. And they've done something really genius, quite genius in fact, in that they have given everybody and anybody and their dog the opportunity to create a side income, right? That's really the core message of their business. You can just rent out your spare room, you can rent out your cabin, you can rent out your shed, you can rent out your boat, you can rent out your granny's apartment, right? And just create an extra income, right? And that's great. I'd have no problem with that, but it's not hospitality.
Right.
That's not hospitality. That's not what hospitality is about. Because those people, who wouldn't want to create a side income, especially in the world right now? But those people who do that aren't interested in meeting the guests. They aren't interested in interacting with them. There's a lot of key entry, anonymous hosting. I use the term loosely. And you must have seen this with your 100 or so, stays during your travels. You must have seen various levels of hospitality where some of it doesn't exist at all. In some instances, there's no hospitality. And in some instances, there's like a level of hospitality. But these people are not professional hosts. They are regular people wanting to create a side income.
Right. I would say the average hospitality of what I see is average. Is maybe I see them when I get there because they want to hand me the key.
Right.
And that's because they don't want to put a lockbox out front. I often wonder, I'm like, honestly, I sometimes wonder, like, wouldn't this be a lot easier for everybody if you just put a lockbox out front? Because if it's all you're going to do is hand me the key and show me where the refrigerator is and where the toilet is, I can figure that out. Yeah, exactly. That's the average. But then I've got others that actually want me to eat breakfast with them and are my new best friends and want
Yeah.
to take a walk and show me around the neighborhood. And it always shocks the crap out of me when that happens. So
That even exists, right? But that's what professional hosts do. Right? That's the real hospitality. The people who like people, who love showing them, sharing their local knowledge and showing them around the neighborhood and the best places to see and the best place to see the sunset and the best place to eat in town and what the best thing that you need to eat from their menu at the best place to eat. And all of that local knowledge, that encompasses, in my view, professional hosting.
Do you know what comes up in my mind is there's different types of travelers, right? It's not just different types of hosts.
Yes.
And the kind of the Airbnb model, or what I think of it is, where it's, you self-check-in, that type of thing. You don't really have any hospitality. But you know what? The truth is, there's a lot of travelers that actually don't want to interact with people.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
Oh, this is great. I don't have to meet the host. The host isn't going to be checking in on me every day. They don't want to clean the room every day. I just want to get in my room and be left alone. So that's not the audience. I suspect for your clients, those are not the people they should be chasing.
No, and I understand that there are customers for everybody, right? There are customers for different levels of service and for price points as well. The people that I can help the best are what I call the professionals who want to build a sustainable business, because you can't build a sustainable business out of that Airbnb thing for several reasons. And I'm coming from the host side now, and we'll come from the guest side in a second, because there's a piece there as well. But from the host side, you can't build a business out of that Airbnb model that will sustain you and your family. You can't rely on it because it's not yours. You're on a platform. You are essentially an employee of that platform, where they're going to take a cut of your wages, whatever you want to call it. You're going to do all the work. You're going to do the cleaning. You're going to handle all the damages and stuff like that. And Airbnb are going to take the commission, right? They're going to take a cut of that. And they own the guest relationship. So you cannot contact those people again. You just have to wait until Airbnb feeds you, basically.
I'm curious about, I get that. You know what I hear that's probably relatable? I suspect a lot of our listeners are, the Airbnb concept is relatable. But for me, it relates to the comparison is Uber. You're an Uber driver.
Yes.
How you're never going to get, I don't know how to say get rich, but it's not sustainable. There's people out there
that drive. You don't need to get rich, right? It's not about getting rich. It's about building something you own.
Because
right?
If you're an Uber driver and you're working 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, driving way more than you probably should be for everybody's safety, and then Uber, you have an accident and Uber takes you off the platform, you're done.
Exactly. You got nothing. You got nothing.
Or Uber decides, you know what, let's do a promotion and take 20% off of all the rates today. Okay, well, that impacts it's just that thing. As opposed to the difference would be somebody that starts their own transfer company. Yeah. This resonates with our audience because you start your own transfer company and you work with tour operators, and now you provide a van and airport shuttles, and you've got a website, you've got ways that people can recommend you and call you and all that stuff. It's basically the same thing, right?
Yes, absolutely is the same thing. Yeah, absolutely is the same thing. As long as you are relying on a platform of any description, and we're talking about Airbnb in this context, but as you say, it's the same for Uber.
But it could be Viator, TripAdvisor, Booking.com. It could be any of those, right?
It could be any platform, as long as you are relying on that platform and you're not owning the guest relationship. That's the key. If you're not owning the guest relationship, it's not yours because you can't contact them again, because the platform won't give you their contact details, because the platform understands the power of the database, right?
I don't know if I should even say this. I don't know if anybody from Airbnb is listening and they're going to deactivate my account, or review where I've stayed and go after people. But I'm kind of that guy that shows up and I book 2 or 3 nights and just to see if I like the place. And then I connect, and usually, a lot of times I'm at least communicating with the host. And I'm like, hey, I think I might like to stay here a little bit longer. How should I do it? And some of them will just say, go back to the app and just modify your thing, whatever. And then there's others that I connect with and have conversations. So I can see why Airbnb doesn't want me talking to the hosts. I get that.
Sure.
Because I booked 3. I booked 3 nights on Airbnb, and then I booked 2 weeks directly with the host.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't feel like that's a moral thing I need to work through in my head. I don't know, but I don't know where the conversation's going from there. But let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. You go ahead. You go ahead.
I hear about like if you're dependent on the platform, like if you just say, okay, my business model is I'm going to be an Airbnb, I'm going to get on one platform and I'm going to make the room really nice with a bunch of furniture from IKEA or wherever. And I think I'm going to make a bunch of money. It might work for a while, but I guess really what I want to ask is this a marketing conversation with your potential new clients or your current clients? Is this about having your own website, your own process, and then marketing? Or is it equally important how they manage I know how the guest experience is super important, but where do you start to get them off of the Airbnb platform?
It's a process, right? So it doesn't happen overnight. And if you are dependent on a platform and you've had enough of that because they changed the rules without telling you, they just changed the commission structure last year where the guest used to pay a percentage and the host used to pay a percentage, and then they put the whole thing onto the host, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in alignment with other platforms, which is minimum 15% now. And then if you get fed up with that and, you discover, and this happens quite often, you discover that you actually like doing this. You actually enjoy meeting the people, and you want to move to what I would call a professional model, then it's a process. So you don't want to cut off your lifeline to Airbnb or booking.com from day one.
Why do you have to, I'm curious, Yvonne, why do you have, because I heard you say, if you find that you want to interact more with the guests, honestly, the question that pops into my head is that a requirement? Because I'm thinking, couldn't I just do really good marketing and have a key box out front and offer the same thing I was offering on Airbnb, but marketing it myself?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that, because that leads into what I wanted to say earlier about the guest experience from the other end of the Airbnb model. And yes, some people don't want to interact with other people, but hospitality in its essence is about people. It's a relational experience, right? It's not a technological experience. It's not anonymous at its core. It can be anonymous and you can still operate what I call the pro model without meeting your guests. But there has to be a human to human element connection to it. That is hospitality at its essence. And if you try to erase that completely, then I think we lose something human and quite important.
Right, because from the guest perspective, if I don't care to meet the host and I don't care to interact, then why would I do anything other than Airbnb?
Right.
It's like,
right.
I mean,
then that comes down to right where we are in the world right now, with a big disconnection from each other. Right? Yeah. Because, I mean, this is a bigger conversation, but, just as a little bit of perspective on this, we prefer to stare at screens than go and talk to people. A lot of the time, and that's causing a huge mental health crisis, particularly amongst young people who for some reason just don't have the social skills or can't take the risk of talking to another human being because they grew up with screens as a substitute for human interaction.
So relevant on so many different levels. This is not a bed and breakfast conversation anymore, right? This is
it isn't. No,
it's such a big thing.
I think it is a big thing, and it's bigger than this. It's bigger than, and that's why I believe it's very important for us to redefine what hospitality is, which is essentially a human to human experience.
But how do you, going forward, if we look 10, 15 years into the future, when these younger people, and some of them are already like in the age groups where they're traveling and paying for their own places to stay, but when 80% of the population is from that age group and that kind of disconnected, I'm not knocking anybody, but what does that mean for a bed and breakfast owner, one of your clients, that's thinking about what are we going to do in 20 years when nobody's talking to anybody? Or do they look at it and say, what a great opportunity to reach those people that are craving it? Because it could go either way, that conversation, right?
But yes, the second, it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge, huge opportunity right now, particularly in this kind of space that we're in, if you like, in the evolution of our species and where we're going as a species, as a humanity. So we do have a disconnected generation. I was having this conversation, oddly enough, with my eldest daughter yesterday, who's 35, completely disillusioned with the way the world works for her and her cohort. And I believe, so if you can think about it like this, hospitality at this moment is fragmented, and it has fragmented, as I see it, into three fragments. On the one end, you've got big hotel chains that are like Marriott's and Hilton's and those big chains that work with OTAs, they work with Booking.com, they work with Expedia and all of those guys, they work with Google, and it's all about heads in beds, volume, turnover, heads and beds. My youngest daughter works for the Mercure hotel group in France, and she has plenty of stories about churn and heads in beds, right? And that's fine. Let them do that. And then on the other end of the hospitality spectrum, you've got the Airbnbers, the side income hustle people, the side hustles, right? And what's happened in the middle is what I call the professional hosts, like the boutique hotels, the inns in America, the B&Bs in Europe and around the world, and the resorts and the boutique experience have somehow lost their place. And they have strayed into the big chain model, which is all about the price and the dynamic pricing and let's drop the prices because we've got no bookings this weekend. And then they've drifted away from centre again into the Airbnb model. Oh, well, no one wants to talk to us anymore. Let's put some key entry boxes, and let's give them an anonymous experience, right? And they've lost their centre. They've lost their place. And what that's done is that opportunity, I believe, has created what they've done has created a big opportunity for them to get back to centre, to get back to what I call true hospitality. The other two extremes are fine. Let them do their things. There'll be customers for those people all of the time, but your customers are those people in the middle. And if you're running a tour business, as a private tour business, this is especially relevant for you as well. And that, when you ask me, what do you do? What would be the first step you take if you wanted to get back to that place, or you wanted to get off the Airbnb model or the Booking.com model, is to focus on that thing that you do really well, your unique value for a particular group of people, not for the people who want the anonymous key entry, not for the people who want to stay in big hotels, but for the people who want that person-to-person human connection experience and be really good at it.
You know what's I'm going to say the word sucks, is if you ask somebody that doesn't know any better, do you like to stay in big hotels? No, I kind of like more of the bed and breakfast thing. And if they don't know any better, it's like, well, where do I find that? And they think, oh, Airbnb, because maybe they haven't experienced enough of it, or they spend time in Airbnb looking for something that looks like an actual bed and breakfast, which is ironic. So that's the question, is kind of its discoverability, because if you've got your bed and breakfast listed on Booking.com, people go on Booking.com, they sort by maybe star ratings and price, and they figure I'm going to get the best 9-star whatever rating on Booking for the cheapest price. And how do you compete with that if you're trying to actually have a hospitality business? You can't.
You can't compete with that. But you see, that's the whole point. You don't need to compete with that. They're not your market. The people that are searching on price are not your market. You must elevate your value, right? So and you know that you are not for everybody. You are only for your people. And your people is defined by where you're located, 3 things: interconnecting circles, where you're located, the reasons people come to your area specifically, and your passions and interests. And when you get all of those 3 things matched up, you have a little piece in the middle where the circles overlap, which I call the sweet spot. And those are the people that you want to attract.
So how does the person listening to this, like, the question in my mind is, okay, great. I know how to search by price. I know how to search by rating. I know how to search by location. I don't know how to search by value.
It's
Help
not
me
that
out.
difficult. It's not that difficult, right? So, first of all, there are two places that your people are hanging out. If you're listening to this and you're wondering how to get started, I'm going to give you two things that you can do right now. You can go to the TripAdvisor travel forum for your area, and you will see people in there, particularly if you're in a tourist area. You will see people in your particular travel forum for your area, if not your town, asking questions about visiting your town. There are millions of people in that forum on millions of different forums, and you can narrow it down specifically to your area or to your town, and you can start answering their questions. Do not sell. Now, there's some background setup to this to make it work, but this is a starting point, right? And you will find people in those forums asking the questions that you can answer in your sleep.
And the idea on that, if you don't mind, we don't need to go into the tech details, because I understand when their setup is.
The setup is important, but just go there and you will find your people, right? So then you'll know that they're there. You know that your people are there, right?
And then if you're adding value, you're providing value to those people is the
Answering
idea.
their questions, not selling at all. No selling at all, right? And that's why the setup is important, right?
Right.
The back setup, which we can't go into right now because it's too technical.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And this is not a how-to to do anyway. But I'm just giving you two
How do we
pointers.
hack the system? How do we hack TripAdvisor?
It's not difficult. It's easier than you think, right?
All right, cool. Yeah.
So the second thing is that when you've got your three interconnecting circles, where you're located, why people are coming. So for example, if you're located in the mountains, people are coming for hiking. They might be coming for winter sports. They might be coming for climbing or canyoning or any potholing, whatever, right? If you match that with your interests, if you're interested in those things, then you'll have knowledge to share with them. And that will lead to great conversations on and offline, which will enrich everybody's experience and put you in a category of one in your area, so that you don't need to compete with everybody else, because the people who are interested in those things that you're interested in, which your area already provides, is enough.
And that's why they're coming there. So now they've got a let's use, I don't know, I'm going to just Snowmass, Colorado, whatever, as an example. Is if I'm thinking about going to Snowmass and I'm trying to find information and I connect with somebody in Snowmass that just seems to know a lot about Snowmass and also happens to have a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, but they're not leading. They're not leading with book a room, book a room. I'm doing a discount, I'm doing a deal. You're not leading with that. You're leading with value.
Because people ignore that. That's just okay. Even if the platform said, yeah, go ahead and sell all you want, which I don't think they do. But even if they did, the people wouldn't respond to that because, real estate's an example. Like if you're a real estate agent, I'm not knocking them. I sold real estate for a while. But it's, they train you, add value to people and give them value. And you just see in social media, every time somebody says, hey, we're thinking about moving to Colorado, 14 real estate agents start talking about,
pile on, right? They pile on with their deals and discounts.
Yeah, let me help you, put you in touch with a great realtor in the area and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, instead of, Snowmass, really cool. You're going to love it. Do you guys like to ski? And, have that conversation. And then you create a connection and then they just happen to find out you're a real estate agent. Then you've got a connection with them already. And it's not about just that hard sell, right?
Exactly. And that word connection, that is so important. That's so important. Now,
it's
I'm going to give
hugely important.
It's hugely important, particularly in hospitality, right? Because it's a human business. It's relational, It's about humans.
I hope some tour operators that are listening to this are recognizing that this conversation applies to them exactly the same.
This conversation applies to any business. This is why it's a process, right? I'm giving you two tips here, but the whole thing is a mindset. Basically, it's a mindset shift from selling your rooms at any price using the hotel model or the Airbnb model than sitting in your value and genuinely trying to help people, right? And that works in any business. I learned this, and it's part of my backstory. I learned this from another business outside of hospitality. The second thing, let's just, before I go to that, let me just give you the second thing, right? Once you've got your 3 interconnecting circles and you know who you are and you know who you best serve because of who you are, where you're located, and the reasons people are coming, there are a gazillion Facebook groups. And you are bound to find at least half a dozen around your topics. And it's the same principle as going to the TripAdvisor travel forum. You join those groups and you start answering people's questions. And it's the same principle. And of course, the setup is important. You know, when they hover over your name, you've got to have yourself set up properly so that they're curious. You know, who is this person giving this great information? Who's this? Look, I think I'll go to his profile. Oh, look, they've got a property and that I can stay at.
Yeah. Yeah,
look, here's their website address, you know?
And here's one of the cool things about this whole thing is a lot of people don't scroll through the groups to read their own stuff. They just like to ask the same question over and over. But some people do actually go through the group and look for similar questions or whatever. And so you might be responding to Mary about a question she had, but then 6 months later, Bill can come across the thread and see your response. So this is not necessarily one-on-one. It's not like for every contact you make, you have to answer their question. You answer one question and maybe 14 people will see it and think, oh, this person seems interesting.
Exactly.
Like you said, they go to your profile and, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is how our minds work, isn't it? You know, somebody gives us an answer to our question or actually shows an interest in us, right? Because everybody is craving to be seen and heard. Everybody in the world right now. It's the state of the world.
And you think about it, like, I think you and I have both spent enough time looking at traveling groups or groups, you know, and Facebook, for example, and some of the groups are kind of ruthless, right? So someone posts a question and maybe there's 10 responses or like, why don't you scroll through the feed? Why are you asking this question? Why don't you go to Google? Why don't you know? They're kind of asses.
Yes.
And then, so if you're the one that shows up and says,
being
wow,
kind.
You're going to love it. Yeah, you're going to love it here. Make sure you check this out when you're in the area. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I just made a friend by comparison to everybody else's.
Someone cares.
Someone didn't tell me I'm dumb for asking.
Right.
And it's like, yeah. Or people sometimes post things on Facebook and don't get any response. Like, wow, nobody even cares. Yeah, so I love it. That's really, really, really good.
And at this particular time in our evolution, right? These things are crucial. These things are like gold dust, right? Human connection has fallen off a cliff.
What do you, because the connection thing is why I started this whole podcast. I've been traveling full time for 4.5 years in countries where I love connecting with the locals, but honestly, sometimes I kind of stick out and it's not always that easy. And the podcast came from my desire to have an interesting conversation with someone that has similar interests at least once a week. So I didn't feel so lonely. I'm sharing everything with the listeners now. That's a big part of why I do this.
Yeah.
And because it's that connection and it's been so wonderful, you know, because I'm looking at it from somebody that does podcasting, I'm like, geez, if I had an Airbnb in Snowmass, Colorado, maybe I'd start a podcast in Snowmass, Colorado, and I would interview ski instructors or people that own art galleries or restaurant people and create a connection that way without ever selling my Airbnb. I don't have to talk about it's not an Airbnb podcast. It's a Snowmass podcast.
Yes.
And people figure out what you do. I mean, you've seen my website. Anybody listening to this probably knows I do marketing stuff. I don't make my money from the podcast, but people listen to the podcast. A lot of tour operators listen to the podcast, and some of them want to hire me.
The important thing, Jason, is that you're enjoying yourself, right? You're enjoying what you're doing, and that's it. That is contagious, you know. It's infectious, and people are drawn to people who are enjoying what they're doing. If you're running a tour business or you're running a hospitality business, you know, enjoy it. If you enjoy it, people will enjoy enjoy you and then connect with you. And then, everything that you've just described about your snowmass hypothetical, I did all of that in Champagne. I had a YouTube channel,
Okay, yeah.
And
yeah,
I went
YouTube's
out
a great example, yeah.
Because, this is 2010, right? And podcasts didn't exist back then. But, my husband and I, we were on podcasts, we were in magazines, we were writing articles for other people's magazines about Champagne, about the area,
Yeah.
because we were in our sweet spot. And, you don't have to appeal to everybody. You just need to appeal to your people.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. That's very cool. So you've definitely convinced me and anybody that's listening that if I was just not just a tour operator, but let's say I don't even own a piece of property, I'm like, wow, Yvonne's got all this really useful stuff. Have you worked with people that don't even have a bed and breakfast?
I have.
I suspect you have.
Yes, because these principles are universal.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. These principles are universal, right? And I mentioned about my backstory. I learned all of this outside of hospitality.
Before you touch on that, let's start working towards that. But instead of going straight to that spot, let's go even further back. Because I think everybody that I've had conversations with, especially in this space that is interested in this type of stuff, has a backstory, of course. But I want to go to where it really started. So let's go back. Where did you grow up? What was going on when you were a kid, high school age, teenager, whatever? What do you think happened back then that might have influenced where you are now?
Yeah, well, a couple of things really. So my father worked for a government organisation in the UK called the Ordnance Survey, and they are the government organisation that make maps. And when I was a child, yes, and when I was a child, it's well known in the UK. And when I was a child, there was no technology, no satellites or anything.
So my father, Google Maps.
No, nothing.
No Google Maps.
Nothing. No internet. And my father would go out in the daytime with his team members and they would measure up the countryside, literally.
Okay.
And then come home at night and he would draw the maps freehand. Incredible, right?
Yeah.
What was really interesting about that is that as soon as he had mapped out the area that he was assigned to, we would move.
Oh.
Yes. Wow. So by the time I spent the first 5 years of my life living in a caravan with my parents while he mapped out, lots of areas in the UK. And then we finally got a house, I think when I was about 5 or 6 years old. But by the time I was 15, I'd been to 9 different schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get really good at meeting new people.
Just before we go any further, if somebody were to go back and listen to every episode, it's interesting. 2 of the things that come up a lot are conversations about maps.
Really?
And childhoods like that, where you moved a lot, you had to make new friends. It's so, because the map part comes up, usually we're talking about National Geographic. That's usually where maps comes up.
Right.
Is how many guests I've had on the show that used to have National Geographic maps on their walls when they were kids, or used to just love to sit and flip through an atlas and look at maps and stuff.
Yeah,
so you just
love maps.
You just brought those 2 things together in a way that's like nobody else could have. Okay. So you still like maps?
Yeah. I was that kid, flicking through the atlas.
But your dad was making them, drawing them by hand. That's where it goes to a whole nother level. Because other people said their dad gave them National Geographics. Your dad would sit at the table and draw them. And you were moving a lot because of the map making business. Wow. Yes, that's pretty cool.
Only in the UK, though. Only in the UK.
Yeah.
But, since then, I mean, flicking through the atlas is just a joy, isn't it?
Me too.
Yeah, I love
them. I don't know why. It's weird. For me, I don't know why. It is weird. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. For me, it was just a thing. I just always liked the maps. So, all right. So you were moving a lot. You said 9 different schools. You had to make friends every time you showed up at a new school, which can either break you. Some people are just totally broken by that, and it's trauma that they never recover from. And then there's other people that become social butterflies and do things they never would have done if it wasn't for that. So which one are you?
Both,
You're not
I think.
The broken one. Oh, really?
Both.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
It was traumatic. It was traumatic. But, it teaches you to be resilient because it's quite hard, particularly, well, I think it's quite hard at any age, but particularly when you get to teenage years, to break into an existing friendship group. That's quite hard. But I had to do that on a couple of occasions. And then I I grew up basically, and then I met my husband, and then I've had two husbands actually, but I met my second husband, and we were both working for an international duty-free drinks company in the UK, and he got the opportunity to take a job in the office in San Francisco. And so in 1989 we left the UK and we went to live in San Francisco and did the whole California thing. It was amazing.
Yvonne, I want to dig into that, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to ask you, other than moving around and trying to make friends, and that sucks. I did that too. You and I actually have a lot of common. I had maps on the walls, and my parents were divorced, and I was traveling. My dad traveled. I was probably 8 or 9 different schools as well. But I'm curious about you. What did you think you wanted to do? If we could go back to 15-year-old you, and I said, What do you want to do when you grow up? What were you thinking?
Oh, I was going to miss that as well.
Yeah, I know. That's
really quite relevant, actually.
You.
Yeah, it's really quite relevant because I was really good at sewing.
Okay.
Yes, my mother taught me how to sew when I was about 11, and because everybody made their own clothes, your mother made your clothes in my childhood. And then I grew up making clothes for myself, and by the time I was about 15, I was making clothes for my friends as well, making dresses for my friends. And then I let go of that for some reason. I think in this day and age, I would have applied to fashion school. But that wasn't on the table for me back then. That wasn't an option. So everybody went to be a secretary in my day, right?
Well, if you did stick, I guess, with sewing and fashion, but you couldn't go to fashion school, what would that look like for a teenage girl that likes to sew? She's working as a seamstress or something? I don't know.
I let it go and I became a secretary.
Okay, all right.
And then I carried on sewing in my spare time because I enjoyed it. And that led on to, so I stopped making clothes when we started getting Chinese imports. And I got into soft furnishings, and I studied a diploma which is well known in the UK called City and Guilds. It's a well-known diploma in soft furnishings and interior design. And that's the thread, I think, that led me to my B&B.
Get it. And soft furnishings is,
yes.
I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm imagining bedspreads, pillows, and stuff like that.
Yes.
Curtains,
cushions, soft furnishings. It's things you make from fabric for the home, and interior design as well. So I love a house project. I've done tons of house projects. I even built my own house when I was 29 with my first husband. You said the word, there's the thread. I love that you use that. And I almost missed that, and it just popped in my head again. I was like, oh, I see the thread. Yeah. From 15 sewing to decorating and having Airbnb with nice rooms. I suspect they were really nice rooms. Yes. Yeah. They were full of, our houses are full of things that I've made. Okay. Well. Yes. And I love all that. Yeah. So but then we went to San Francisco and we lived there for just about a year. And then from there we went, my husband, my second husband, got the opportunity with a job in Tokyo. Okay. So we went there. You just going all around the world, aren't you? That's cool. And then, so we lived there for 4 years, and our 2 girls were born there in Tokyo. Wow. What's your favorite reflection or memory of Tokyo? Oh, gosh. I'm sure there's a few. You had 2 children. Yeah. Probably not a fair question, is it? The giving birth was an experience that I'll never forget. It was just phenomenally good. Good. Yeah. Just the Japanese are so gracious. They're so gentle. I think at that time, I'm talking early 1991 to 95, there were like 50,000 expats in Tokyo, 30,000 of which were American. And we used to congregate around the Tokyo Union Church. And there was a big sort of women's group based in Tokyo Union Church. And that is one of my best memories of my time there. Just phenomenally inspirational women. Interesting. And presumably, I want to ask this question. I mean, you had a lot in common. Presumably you had a lot in common. I suspect that a lot of these women were people that, women that were, their partner, or maybe they got a job working in Tokyo. And especially if their partner did, they're probably feeling a little bit lost because he gets to go to work
You know,
Exactly.
he's engaging with probably other expats at work, and the wife is like in a situation like, you know, especially if you've got a family, it's hard enough to go out and get a job and raise kids and do all that stuff when you're in your own culture. But when you're in a different country and don't speak the language, holy cow, I can see that.
It was a huge support. It was a huge support system there for us. It was wonderful, really good.
You know, you remember in San Francisco, there was Chinatown,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In Tokyo, do they have expat town, or they don't call them gringos? I don't know what they
call
would
it
call
gaijin.
Gaijin, right.
Gaijin,
So
yes.
are there neighborhoods that are very, very like,
Yeah.
it's almost like the same thing as having Chinatown in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Almost the same, but not quite as colourful. But that was good. And the funny thing is, the sewing thing came with me to Japan. And I learned several craft skills, just by going to classes and interacting with the expats, but also the Japanese ladies as well, who had lived abroad and who had come back to their home country, but still wanted to be interacting with international people. So I learned some new skills there, and you know, my friend and I had a little business selling our crafts, and
Cool.
that was interesting. But then again, the house was filled with things I'd made, and then we came back to the UK from Japan, and then immediately went to France. My husband got a job with Moët. Well, first he did an MBA. He did an MBA in Paris, and then he got a job with Moët, and we moved to Champagne. And then I carried on, you know, remodeling my houses and decorating them with all my soft furnishings, and that really set the scene. One day I met a lady who was doing bed and breakfast, and I looked at her and I thought, you know what, I can do that. I have the skills.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to be very blunt. I don't know if you're still friends with her or know her, but sometimes we look at people and think, if they can do it,
How hard can it be?
I'm smarter than they are, so if they can do it, I can do it. And other times we look at people and say, wow, this person's really squared away, and they're inspiring me to follow their path. Which was it for you?
The first.
Okay, moving right along. No,
Well,
I get
just
it.
thought, well, how hard can that be? You know, I have the skills, and I'd also
You've
taken
got a lot
the
of
class.
soft furnishings.
Yes, I can make
Yeah.
any room look great.
Uh-huh.
And I love meeting people. And I'd also done, I forgot to mention this, but I'd also done a course in cooking at the Cordon Bleu School in London. So, I mean, I had it all.
That's important.
I had it all, really. But oddly enough, as I got good at my B&B, and I realised that those skills are all great to start with, but those skills aren't going to bring the guests. You've got to be good at marketing. You've got to know what you're doing in terms of business. And that was a real growth opportunity for me, because I was doing all of the fluffy stuff, what I call the fluffy stuff, with the, you know, the
Fun
making
stuff,
of the
right?
nice things
It's
and
probably
making
the
the
fun
rooms
stuff.
nice.
Yeah.
That brought me less than 10,000 a year. But when I turned pro, as you might say, I outsourced a lot of those, the cleaning and the laundry and the cooking and lots of other things. I outsourced. I had a team so that I could focus on the one thing that only I could do, and that is to attract the guests and give them an exceptional experience. And I got good at that.
Because it's really hard to do that when you're doing all those other things and
You
you're
can't do it.
dealing
You
with
just
laundry or...
No, you can't. You
Any
just
of it,
can't.
really.
And that, I think that applies to any business, really. You get stuck in the weeds doing the thing you like doing, right? Which is taking care of, you know, the guests and doing that thing. And there's no time to focus on, I think it's Dan Sullivan calls it the $1,000 an hour tasks. When
Yes.
you're in the weeds with the $10 an hour tasks, nobody's doing the $1,000 an hour tasks.
I remember, and this has come out, it's about leverage. One of the things that I actually really valued about working in the real estate business is I actually had good coaching and good people around me that were pretty smart about things. And, you know, they would say things like, well, you should do, like, you should get a list of people that maybe you're ready to sell their homes and send them nice little handwritten notes, or past guests or past clients or whatever. But then they would say, but you don't do it yourself.
Right.
Because if you figure out that as a realtor, you know, writing contracts, showing homes, and doing those things that generate money that you can't pay somebody else to do, if you figure out your average, you're making $100 an hour working in real estate, and you're going to sit there and spend 2 hours licking envelopes,
Right. Same
It's like,
principle.
wait a minute, you're paying $200 an hour to have somebody lick envelopes? And I'm not knocking people to lick envelopes, but there's people that would love to lick envelopes
Yes.
for a much lower price than $200 an hour. It's kind of that same concept is, but people slip into this is something I know I can do right now. And just, they feel like they're doing something, but they're not really. They're doing something, but they're not really, it's not the
They're
best
not
way
really, no, they're busy, but they're not actually creating anything.
Right. I used to hear the term, getting ready to get ready.
Yeah.
Doing those things that, before I start this really useful project, I need to do this other project. And it becomes a
time suck, just a time suck.
I deal with it, which there's a couple things there. But before I go any further on that, I want to, because you'd mentioned when you were telling us about how you learned things like going to TripAdvisor or to Facebook and connecting, you made a comment about you'd learned some of that stuff in a previous business.
Yes.
And I can't put my finger on that because I don't know that we really touched on it. So what did we miss in the middle between, I guess you got your degree and the interior decorating, the soft furnishings.
So in that, yes.
You did cordon bleu. You did a bunch of things. So
yes, I've done so many things. So there was a period before I went pro in my B&B when my husband didn't have a job. And so we set up a business importing champagne into the UK from small producers that we knew in France. We had been there a long time and we had a network, and he'd worked at Moet, and we knew a lot about champagne. We knew a lot of people and we knew a lot of small producers. So we set up a business, and this is just after the internet took off, particularly in the UK. And we set up this business importing champagne into the UK. This was our first foray into what you might call a real business, using and with the internet as well, because that's another element, if you like, another thing to get to grips with. And we had that business for about 4 years, and we lost it in the crash of 2008, 2009. But I learned a ton about how business works. And so I'll be forever grateful to that very painful experience. But I learned about, who is your client? Who can you best serve with your knowledge and your skills? Where are they? Where are they hanging out online? How do you reach them? Directly to them, not mass market to everybody, because then you turn yourself into a commodity, and commodities are chosen on price. You want to move yourself up. I have this diagram that I use with my clients, a pyramid shape. And if you can imagine, on the bottom rung of the pyramid, you've got the hobbyists, which is where I was. And then the next rung up, you've got the generalists, right? These are the people who are, running it for a living, running their business for a living, but still don't know who they can best serve, still haven't touched their own intrinsic value, still haven't tapped into that. And then you've got the two pieces at the top, the next rung up and the top rung are what I call the specialist and then the expert. And the specialist is where you can aim for, and everybody in business needs to aim for the specialist category to get out of the hobbyist, to get out of the generalists categories where it's very crowded, and it's price driven. You need to when you get into the specialist category, which is, in my world, it is the specialist on your area, simply because you live there, right? You already know more than your guests. All you got to do is share that knowledge online, as well as sharing it when you meet the people, when you meet your guests or your customers, you share it online as well. And the expert is like what I would call the cherry on top, is where you become a specialist on a topic of your area, right? So we became that specialist on champagne because you may not know this, but in the Champagne region of France, it's mostly known, it's known for the drink, right? But it's also very well known for the World War I battlefields of the Marne and the Somme, right? Because it's on the Marne, it's in the Marne region, and there are loads of cemeteries, loads of monuments, loads of museums, and people flock there every year looking for their ancestors and their relatives, looking for the graves, and World War I enthusiasts, right? So there's a ton of tourists coming for that reason, right? But I can't talk about that because it doesn't interest me. You remember those 3 concentric circles, where you're located, the reasons people are coming, and you. And if you're in alignment with what your guests are coming for, you're onto a winner. But if you're not, it won't work. So I couldn't possibly speak to the people coming for the World War I stuff because it doesn't interest me and I know nothing about it. But if you want to come and discover the hidden gems of Champagne, I'm your girl.
Okay.
I can open the doors for you, right? I can show you where to go, how to get into meet the people and visit the places that the ordinary tourist would never find.
As opposed to someone down the street with an Airbnb that says,
has no clue.
Come here and there's champagne to drink and there's war stuff to see, and they're more the generalist.
Right.
But not really doing any of it very well.
Right.
But I suspect there's plenty of people that want to go to the Champagne region of France to learn about champagne, to enjoy
exactly.
that
and
part
so
of
I
it.
focused on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I went into the TripAdvisor travel forum, I thought it was Christmas. You know, there's all these people in there asking questions
about
like,
what I know about.
Exactly.
And what I'm interested in.
Exactly. And then
cool.
I went to Facebook and started joining the groups. I'm like, oh my God, these are my people.
So once the champagne business, with the economy and all that stuff, I get that. And then you thought, well, geez, now I can really focus on the Airbnb using the same, I said Airbnb. Ooh.
Yes.
Slap my wrist.
It's easy to do, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is.
I just applied the same principles. I applied the same principles because these principles are not, I didn't make them up, right? They are timeless business principles that you will get from any sound business advisor. Dan Sullivan, Jay Abraham. Here's a quote from Jay Abraham, who I love. True innovation comes from outside your industry. Yes. So when you look in on your industry, you will find everybody saying the same things. But if you look outside your industry, you can pick up some principles, some key principles that aren't being talked about inside of your industry.
It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
When you first started, I guess it's fair to say, as a hobbyist, bed and breakfast person. So when you first opened the doors and said, we're going to let people stay in our house, first of all, when you bought the house or when you rent, I don't remember if you said you bought it, but when you got the house, you didn't have a plan to turn it into an Airbnb.
We did. Yeah, I did.
You did? Oh, you did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The question I think I want to ask everybody, especially, was this a mutual decision? Because I can imagine some families where maybe the wife or the husband is like, I think we should have a B&B. And I can see the other person's maybe not so outgoing or not so interested in actually running into people in the living room in the morning. And they're just no way. Was this a mutual thing, or what would you like to share with our listeners about that?
Yeah, two things. It was a mutual thing. My husband enjoys sharing his knowledge about champagne. He enjoys hospitality and hosting people as well. But he had a full-time job at the time. When we bought the house specifically so that we could do B&B, right? And it was a renovation project, which I designed, and I'd specifically designed the house so that my family was separate. So we weren't bumping into them in the hallway in our pajamas, Okay.
Because I was going to ask you about your daughters as well. You said they were daughters?
Yes, they were quite young.
I was going to ask you about that.
They were 7 and 9 at the time. And they loved it too. But at any point, if somebody said, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't like it, I would have stopped. And bearing in mind, I was doing it as a hobby. So we weren't relying on it.
You would have stopped then, but then it got to the point where...
But I couldn't stop later on. And everybody could see that, right? Everybody could see that. And everybody was on board and everybody helped into the process because we were in a sticky situation and it was a family decision to grow this thing and so that we could keep our house, basically. Mm-hmm. So we were all invested in the business. But you want to be, I believe that in a professional setting, you need to be separate from the guests.
I think so too. I think for the guests.
Yes.
For the guests as well.
For everybody. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. You need to have a boundary line, right, between you and your family and the guests.
Because I've done not what I would call a traditional bed and breakfast, but I've done kind of the homestay thing that where and maybe book it through a platform that we discussed earlier. And I fall into the trap every once in a while. I'm like, this place, this room looks really nice and the reviews are great. And then I go there and I'm like, oh, I did it again. And, and they've got the sink full of their family's dirty dishes, and they've got just the things, the nightmare things that are just like, as soon as I walk in, I'm like, damn it, I keep forgetting I'm not staying in people's houses anymore, or grandma's sitting in the living room watching TV all day long. And it's just like, you feel so awkward. I just go in my room and I stay in my room the whole time.
Yes, I don't blame you. I would too.
And they're like, oh, you can use the fridge, and you open the fridge and you're like, I'm not going to eat anything out of this fridge.
And everyone's using the bathroom.
Oh, and then the shared bathroom thing. It's like, yeah. So usually, I'm like, okay, I'm out. My worst experience ever in 4.5 years was I booked a room in a woman's apartment for a month. I don't know what I was thinking. I paid a month in advance because it was cheaper, and I got there, and it was horrible. The room was falling apart. There are all kinds of issues, but the worst thing is she'd sit in the living room. It was a really small apartment here in Mexico City a few years ago, and she would chain smoke in the room, and a lot of other things. And I was kind of early in my traveling, and I was like, you know what? If I'm going to travel the world and be this person, I need to be able to adapt to cultures and not be such a, snob about it. And then I was like, and I was in the army. I used to sleep in the dirt. What's wrong with sleeping in a crummy apartment? And I stayed a couple days just like telling myself I needed to be tougher. And then finally I was like, I fell asleep crying one night. And I got up the next morning and I'm like, why am I punishing myself? Why am I mad at myself? Right? What am I trying to, do?
What am I trying to prove here?
Yeah, what am I trying to prove? I'm trying to punish myself for choices I've made in the past, or people I've upset or disappointed. And finally, I got out of that place, and it took me a few days to recover. I had to go to Puerto Vallarta to sit on the beach so I could get over that. But anyway, so yes, I think it's good to have separate spaces in any of those settings. I did want to ask you, your daughters, like, I don't know what they do now. I'm kind of curious. Like, did either one of them grow up and think, I want to have an Airbnb? I keep saying that, a B&B, bed and breakfast someday? Or did they like, no way, I'd never do that again? Or what did they take away from that?
One of them didn't much like it in the end. But she moved out when she was 19. To go to college, and she didn't like it after that. The younger one works in a hotel.
Okay. Were they helping to the level of like cleaning rooms and stuff like that when they were young? We had a team to do that. Okay.
They didn't do that.
Okay, good.
No.
Okay.
But they enjoyed talking to people. They enjoyed, particularly the younger one. She's very chatty. The elder one's more private and more reserved. But when they were young, they were both quite outgoing. But the younger one was more so. She loves people. She loves the hospitality setting. She likes working in her hotel, interacting with international people. Both of them really enjoyed that. We all enjoyed that. We had people coming from all over the world. It was because we set out to welcome international guests who wanted to discover the hidden gems of Champagne. And that meant, and no disrespect to French people, but we priced ourselves out of the French market, the local market.
Yeah, I get it.
Right? Because we couldn't add any value to French people. We could add way more value to international people because the French people know how everything works anyway, right? They're in their own country, right?
And even when they're not in their own country, they know how it works.
But international people from other countries, they need your help. They need your help. And you can add more value. We had people from all over the world, and they loved that. We all loved that. We loved it very much.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So do you still have a bed and breakfast? I mean, obviously you're coaching other people to do this and sharing what you learned over the years to help them take their business to the next level, but you're not hosting guests anymore.
No, we sold our property and our business in 2021. So we've been gone now, 5 years? Yeah.
All right. And where do you live now?
We live in the UK. It was time to go home.
No, I get it. Yeah.
No, it was. We travelled a lot. We'd lived in the US, we'd lived in Japan, we lived in France for many, many years. And it was time for us to go back to the UK.
When you go on, do you still travel occasionally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you always stay at bed and breakfasts, or do you sometimes stay in hotels?
It depends. Sometimes we stay at top-notch hotels, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But and sometimes we stay in an Airbnb, actually. And
Okay.
sometimes we stay at proper B&Bs as well. And the hospitality is so varied between the three of them.
How do you can you honestly say that you enjoy visiting a bed and breakfast when they're missing it and you know they're missing it? I mean, does that,
I
because
don't. I
that's
don't
like,
enjoy it at all. I don't enjoy that at all. No,
Yeah,
because the
it's-
majority of them are missing it. The majority, sadly, are missing it.
it's just from what and I'm doing something different. The place I'm staying or not, probably there might be a few that might work with you that want to take it to the next level, but there's always something missing. And it's always something that seems so obvious.
Yes.
Like a trash can in the bathroom, some sort of trash bin in the bathroom, or there's always, I mentioned that, or not having a plug close to the bed, or there's just always something weird that like,
Yeah.
ooh, they could fix that. They don't have to install a plug in the wall, but they could do something, move the bed maybe. I don't know, but there's just always something.
I agree. And I think a lot of it is down to the current situation that they find themselves in, whereby they've been beat up on both sides of this fragmented world that I mentioned earlier. They've been dragged into the Airbnb model where they think they don't have to greet guests anymore, and they've been dragged into the dynamic pricing of the big chains where people are booking last minute so they can get the best deal. They have taken their place in the centre and identified those sweet spot that we talked about, and they haven't gone after the guests that they want. And all of that over time, particularly in this time that we're in right now, but if they've been in it for a few years, they will have seen the changes and experienced the changes over the years where the platforms have taken away their control, and they've lost confidence in themselves. And that is a huge loss, I think, to this industry, and also the opportunity.
Asking you what do you think is going through their heads? I think you did a great job of explaining some of that. Do you think that sometimes when you see things just missing, do you feel like the host is just kind of giving up?
Yeah,
because that's what I hear you saying.
They've been through so much,
Yeah.
they've been through so much, particularly in the last sort of 6 years, when we had COVID and the government came along and shut them all down. I mean, imagine that. Just imagine relying on your hospitality business and the government comes along one day and says you can't have any guests anymore, shut your doors, stay indoors, cut off your entire income stream, your sense of purpose.
It wasn't just hospitality.
No, it
you're
wasn't.
Right.
It
Like
wasn't,
the restaurants, everybody. It was. Oh boy, that's a whole nother
It was
conversation.
brutal. It was
yeah.
brutal, right?
Yep.
And
you know what? It could happen tomorrow. I don't want to say that. I don't want to put it out in the universe. But that's
that it could happen tomorrow again. And that is, I don't think we collectively have gotten over that.
Yeah.
Because nobody has apologized for what they
don't
did.
want to apologize because they want to be able to. We're getting political now, but
Yes.
they know what we as a society will do. They know. Oh, this is how people respond when we do these things. It's a little easier to do it again because they know what mistakes they made and they know how. Whatever. I don't know. It's all right. Let's change the topic.
I agree with you entirely, and there's a big conversation there, but probably for another time.
For another show.
Or
Maybe
even
for
off
the
camera.
Joe Rogan. Yeah, off camera. Yeah, when we say goodbye to the audience, just know we're going to continue the conversation. Yvonne, we have covered a lot of things, and I know there's always more to cover. But I also want to be respectful of your time coming to share your stories and some tips. But I want to make sure I ask you this. Yvonne, what did I forget to ask you? What do you wish I would have asked you? Or what do you want to make sure our listeners know about you, bedandbreakfastcoach.com, any of that stuff? We're going to have your link in the show notes and all that stuff. But what else? What do we need to touch on before we wrap up?
I think I would like to get the message across how important hospitality is to humanity, how important it is to local economies as well, and how important it is for our own human-to-human relationships. The hospitality businesses, whether that's a big hotel or it's a boutique hotel, a B&B or an inn, or whether it's even an Airbnb, you are the bringer of new money into your community that couldn't have come via any other means. And it's your job to make sure that you are bringing that new money in and keeping as much of it as possible in your local community. That means getting off the platforms where you're handing over upwards of 15% to them when that money needs to be in your economy, in your local economy, right? And that will, when you take your place in that position, knowing that you are the bringer of new money that couldn't come by any other means, you'll start to gain confidence in yourself again as somebody who really matters, because you do.
You got me going. So wonderful. There's so many things. We're just gonna have to figure out a way to have another conversation because I still have a lot of questions. But anyway, Yvonne, this was fascinating. Thank you so much. There's so many things, like people that listening to this, they're tour operators, they should reach out to you. Ignore the fact it says bedandbreakfastcoach.com. Obviously, there are so many individual tour operators that could benefit from having conversations with you or at least following you. And obviously people that have bed and breakfasts or want to have bed and breakfasts. It's very, very cool. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Again, it was such a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. We'll chat with you again real soon. Thanks, Yvonne.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.